What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? I'm Mr. Rad and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be finishing up the RX7 engine swapped Mazda RX8. We're going to hear this thing crank for the first time and maybe even hear it start, but we have a lot of work to do before we can get there. So in the last couple videos, we've dived into some of the more specific parts and intricacies of this build, things that are more RX8 and RX7 engine swap specific, like this exact thing, which was the wiring harness, getting that done, and building the turbo kit, because there's no off-the-shelf items that you can buy to complete either of those tasks. We're moving into the simpler stuff, which is the fuel system is the first thing we're going to tackle in this video. And I've got a bunch of trick parts from Full Function Engineering. Go check out their website, fullfunctionengineering.com. They're helping out on this build a ton, both with knowledge and sponsoring the car, so I have to give them a huge thanks. I've got their rails on here, so they kind of specialize in making all these really trick parts for the RX7 FD, FC, and I'm trying to get them, if you guys go pester them enough, to make some really sweet fuel rails for the Renesis engine, because I need some for that car. So looking a little closer, I've got their primary fuel rail right here and their lightweight secondary fuel rail installed on my excessive lower intake manifold. You'll notice that there are 4 injectors on the secondary and 2 injectors on the primary, and that's because we're going to be making a serious amount of horsepower out of this little 2-rotor, more than just your standard 4 injector setup would allow. So looking closer here, you can see this is their standard fuel rail for 4 injectors. Notice it's a little bit bigger. The inner diameter of this is actually the same as the inner diameter of their lightweight rail. It's as if they just took this and just went, make it as thin and as light as possible, and created that, which is super rad because this looks sexy, but that's even sexier. It's like optimization at its finest, which is rad, but we still have to size up our injectors to go in these rails. One of the most rad parts about Full Function Engineering as well is the guys who run that company actually used to work for Injector Dynamics, which is probably the leading producers and improver testers of fuel injectors out there right now. So I've got 6 injectors from Injector Dynamics, and the guys at Full Function Engineering helped me basically size up and design this whole fuel system, which they can do for you as well. So reach out to them, ask them any questions. They'll be happy to answer them. My primary injectors are Injector Dynamics ID 1050s. If I can get them out of this bag, I'll show them to you. Right here, we're gonna keep the caps on these. I don't want any dirt. This thing's gotta run perfect. So right there we can see ID 1050. And the reason for putting these 1050s in the primary location is all relative to drivability and slow speed control. Okay, so imagine you have a pressure washer and you wanna fill up a small shot glass. It's nearly impossible. But if you have a small squirt bottle, fill up that shot glass, it's gonna go really simply. It's gonna be very easy. You have a lot of control over the low amounts of, water spraying out. So 1000s are great for the primaries. I need to put this somewhere so it doesn't get dirty. There we go, it's on the mirror. I'll forget about that. The good thing is these injectors are labeled because they look the exact same from the outside, but they flow different rates, which would be a terrible situation. My secondary injectors, which there are 4. This is where this gets crazy, guys. I never really realized that I would have this much fuel, but we need a lot of fuel. We're running E85, whatever. This is insanity. So I have 4 ID 2600 cc injectors. Literally each one of these is almost 2.7 or almost 3 times the size of the primary injectors. We've got nearly, 4 of them, 2600 times 4, 10,400 to be exact, just in the primary injectors, plus the 2 1050s, so that's another 2,100. So add that on top of that, we have 12,500 cc's of fuel flow, which is insane for just a little 2-rotor engine. So we've got 4 of those. They literally look almost the same. And a couple of interesting things to note about these injectors that the guys at Full Function Engineering wanted me to share with you. The smaller body injectors, so like these 1050s, I think your 1300s, are built differently than some of the bigger injectors. So these smaller injectors, the internals, because they have more space inside this body, are more resistant to corrosion, E85, different alcohol-based fuels, and premix. They're more resistant to having a malfunction from those things. When you're running E85 and you have these big injectors like these 2600s, you'll see all the, I see it too, the people on the internet, oh, my car starts terribly on E85 because it's been sitting for 6 months and you're, have 52,000 cars projects that you're working on. And these bigger injectors, I believe there's a polymer inside of these that they have to use for the construction, and that polymer doesn't really like sitting around with E85 in it. So we have to be careful about that because we are going to put E85 on this, but it is going to be a very daily drivable, cannonball run worthy vehicle for me, and I'm going to put a lot of miles on this thing, so I don't think I'll have an issue with it. But they just made sure to explain that to me and wanted me to explain that to you, and that just shows the amount of time and effort and knowledge that the guys over at Full Function have when it comes to fuel systems. So even if you've got your fuel system from somewhere else, you've got questions, go over there and ask them questions. You can see on their website they have tons of cool stuff, including like the trigger kit, my EMAP canister, a bunch of other things are from them too. So check their website out, fullfunctionengineering.com. Now that we know primary injectors, oh, I guess that has a blue O-ring, sweet. Secondary injectors, black O-ring, the two 2600s. We'll put these back in the bag so I don't get them dirty. We can start making our fuel lines, which is another interesting topic in this video because I went with ginormous fuel lines, and we have a really high flow fuel filter as well. So I'm going to be building this fuel system from front to back, which is kind of opposite, but I don't want to fill my whole shop full of fuel fumes whenever I pop the fuel pumps out of that tank, and I'm going to be covered in gas. So there's no sense in starting that right here, right now. So at the front of the car, I'm going to have a -8 AN feed line from the back. It's 1/2 inch. It's the big dog. That feed line is going to come from the twin pumps in the back and go to this Injector Dynamics ID 750 fuel filter, which I will show you guys this up close because I got to pull this engine back out of here as well in this video. From here, as you can see, I haven't made that line yet. -8 feed line. We're going to go through, maintain our -8, and go into the bottom of the primary rail. From the primary rail, we're going to come up and out and go to the front of the secondary rail. And running these big feed lines, I had to switch to these banjo style fittings for the end of the rails, which is kind of, it's an extra expense, which really kind of sucks, but at the same time, it makes this so clean and so serviceable, and everything is a swivel now, which is awesome. From the front of the secondary rail, we go out the back, and I'm switching to -6 AN at this point. Here, we're going to come forward. My fuel pressure regulator is mounted to my upper intake manifold. So I'm going to go through the fuel pressure regulator, go out of the fuel pressure regulator, and hit my flex fuel sensor right here. And then from the flex fuel sensor, I'm going to use the factory feed line on the RX8 as my return line. Keeping the OEM steel line under the car, the packaging, the fitment, everything is perfect. I could easily pull a -6 braided line, but honestly on the return side, I really don't need like an excessive amount of extra flow. So it should be ample. It's low pressure. We'll run that. So let's get to making these AN lines because this can be a bit tricky with this big stuff. So we got 4.5 inches between the two bases of the fitting. One of the interesting things is that you are going to consume some of this line inside of that fitting. So 4.5 inches from end to end. So I've always had trouble making these fuel lines that go from the primary rail to the secondary rail on a rotary setup because they're so close together. It's not really like a LS where you're just bridging the two sides, or the simple thing of like a 6-cylinder or 4-cylinder where it's just one rail. So I've got this real short distance we need to cover, and I can't have this 1/2 inch fuel line being all bendy. So I came up with this math, simple math, to calculate the amount of hose that is consumed by the fitting itself. So what I did is I put a piece of painter's tape on here that's 1 inch, okay, and then I put another piece of painter's tape exactly behind that. So now the second piece is 1 inch from the end of the hose. That line at 1 inch back, okay, so the midpoint of these two pieces of tape right here is 1 inch from this end. Whenever I made my hose like this, there was 3/8 of an inch showing, which meant the fitting consumed 5/8 of an inch of that hose, okay? So I measured that distance from a known location on the fitting such that I can then calculate the total length of this line without having it be bent or something dumb. I can always shorten it, but when you take a fitting off and put it back on, one, you scratch everything, and two, the hose is all messed up. So you don't want to like redo that a bunch of times. So we're an inch back here. With that in, there's a 3/8 gap to the fitting, and then 5/8 of that is consumed by the fitting. My total length of the hose is 4.5 inches, which means that I need to take 3/4 of an inch off of that in order to account for the stuff consumed by the fitting. We were 4.5 minus 3/4 is going to be 3 3/4. So right here, and this is all plus or minus 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch at a minimum, guys. It's not like it's got to be perfect. It just can't be a 1/2 inch too long. So we're gonna put that on there. And now that is the end of my new hose. So we had 3/8 of an inch consumed by the fitting from where I measured it. So right here, I'm gonna cut this one off right there, peel the tape, assemble my fitting. A huge recommendation I can make for you guys is to buy quality AN fittings and lines. The Amazon stuff works in a pinch, but you will always struggle to make those fit together. And a quality swivel AN fitting, it just brings so much peace of mind to my fuel system. If it was maybe 1/8 of an inch longer, it'd be perfect, but I think we're gonna be just fine. The rubber will stretch a little bit, like it can. It's not stretching right now. There's just a little bit of some tension pulling this apart. But I just like how clean it is. Nice and concise. No extra bogus. Next up is to make the -6 lines that are going to go from my fuel pressure regulator, which is mounted to my upper intake manifold, to the flex fuel sensor on the firewall, and then to the return line. So these aren't as critical to have the exact length because they are longer lines. So I can make up for like a little bit of an excessive length in the fact that I can just route them a little differently. So throwing the intake manifold on here such that I can measure and test fit these lines to my pressure regulator. I really didn't want to put the pressure regulator in a different location, but you can see here from the filter to the rails to the pressure regulator, everything is easy to service and change. So next up, I actually need to remove the engine. I need to reseal the oil pan and just do the final assembly of the engine on the engine stand. In addition to, you can see I didn't have a clutch on there, so I've got to put a clutch and flywheel on it as well. Y'all ever just do something really stupid and not realize it? Well, I flipped my engine over because I needed to reseal my oil pan. When you have an FD RX7 and the bolts go through the pan when you take them out, it's kind of a mess. And I guess I didn't have all the oil drained out of this engine, so I literally dumped it right on my shoe. Look at this. My DC shoes smoked, which they're already smoked. Now they're real smoked with rotary oil, and I'm gonna have a black stain on my already stained concrete. Love it. Okay. Remove oil pan, clean everything, let it sit overnight, glue the oil pan back on, oil metering pump lines, dress this whole thing up so it looks sexy for some photos, and then flywheel clutch back in the car. Science. So you'd have thought that all the oil would have drained out at this point, coming out of the rear turbo drain, but when I popped the oil pan brace and the oil pan off, it made an even bigger mess. I should have just put the pan down. This was totally unnecessary. All right, so I'm getting ready to install my full function engineering trigger wheel, the front pulley, while my oil pan is draining and being cleaned because it was all over my foot. What I've done is I went ahead and I marked top dead center on the eccentric shaft pulley just to verify that I have the timing marks on the full function engineering trigger wheel close or correct. And how you verify the top dead center, I've got a whole video on this from years and years ago, is basically I'm going to turn the engine until I can see a rear rotor apex seal in the leading spark plug hole. I'm going to mark that. Then I'm going to rotate the engine such that I can see the same apex seal in the trailing spark plug hole. I'm going to mark that. Once I have both of those outside marks, When you rotate the engine to the dead middle of those marks relative to your timing indicator on the front cover, that dead center means that the apex seal of the rear rotor is perfectly in between the spark plug holes, which in turn means, because this is 180 degrees out, that the front rotor is now flat against the face of the housing, meaning the front rotor is at top dead center. So I've marked that on here. I have a whole other video that shows that up close. It's very simple to think about. We're putting the tip of the rear apex seal between the spark plugs so that the flat face of the front rotor is at top dead center, and then I'm marking my pulley. On an FD, there are 2 alignment holes on the front pulley. Doing the whole TDC thing is more so like an old school deal because they're not marked like this. But on the REWs, you have those 2 index holes. The full function wheel, it should only fit on here one way. Line up the index holes, slide this baby on, and you can just verify that you have this wheel in the correct spot with my top dead center mark that I made. Lines up, it's probably 1/8 of an inch off, but it lines up about perfect with the 0 degree mark on the full function wheel. Now I just ichrometered my top dead center marks. If you like actually mark them, you could be way closer than that, but I just really wanted to check it for my sanity. So I'm gonna lightly tap this on here. Sometimes these alignment dowels can be a little tricky and you don't want to bend up this wheel. So we'll get the wheel put on, and then I've got a fresh FD RX7 crank pulley here, and then full function sends nice Allen head bolts to bolt all this together. I would rather use the 6mm like standard bolt that comes, you know, in the front pulley from the factory, so that's what I'm putting back on here. 6 one way, half dozen the other. I just tend to not bring Allen wrenches with me when I'm like at the racetrack or driving down the side of the road and stuff happens. And one thing to note when you're messing with these front hub pulley bolts, at the racetrack I did have my front hub pulley like this come loose on the RX7 once, and the Allen bolts were just a little bit, you know, I didn't have Allen wrenches, so I had to like scramble. Fortunately able to get it tight, but if this comes loose, your time is going to be jumping around, and that's a bad day. So I'm going to use these. I should probably put Loctite on these, but they don't Loctite them from the factory, so barely snug. And then just keep an eye on them. So I talked about this in my wiring video, but this is Full Function Engineering's 36-1 Hall effect trigger setup. It's just a lot more accurate than a factory FD, and when you're going to be building a harness from scratch, might as well go with the better trigger. Every single part of your engine depends on having a good crank location, so that's why we're running that piece on this engine. I got the water pump installed, the alternator installed, primary rails, the oil injectors, the oil metering pump. Ignore my ugly clutch, it's just something I had laying around. This engine's going to come apart to get built. Also got my beautiful purple Full Function Engineering rails with all the injector dynamics injectors in my excessive lower intake manifold, and you can see that billet oil filler from JDL Manufacturing there as well. It just looks sick. Alright guys, I've been putting this thing together, and my dog is barking. Check this out, guys. So I've full yard sold the shop, I have tools everywhere, and ultimately I really need to build some sort of like a little tool cart to have around, because as you can see, I end up working off the floor, which is kind of inconvenient. So at this point, most of this stuff is ready to go in the car. We got our oil filler neck on here from JDL Manufacturing. It's a beautiful piece. We've got my full function rails, we've got the full function trigger, the full function air pump delete pulley, the big turbo. I went ahead, and the turbo didn't come drilled for this little boost port, so I went ahead and drilled that boost port. Thermostat is in. I've got a 180 thermostat in this. It is a street car, so I'm not going to run a super low one, but I do always drill an extra hole in the thermostat right above the little bleeder thing, just so that it's easier to bleed, and then make sure that that's up. It's a little like 3/16 hole. Very simple deal. But the hardest part that I've got, or thing I need to accomplish right now, is this oil filter pedestal. So we have an RX7 engine and an RX8 oil filter pedestal. It does just bolt on. Okay, the issue with it just bolting on though is that, look at this set of holes, it's perfectly symmetrical. All right, now I've slotted these, so ignore that, but the original bolt hole is perfectly along the center, and if you look at the REW, the bolt holes are offset to one side. Now, the distance between the two oil ports is the same, here and there. The RX8 uses a metal gasket, and the FD would have a little recess here for O-rings. So my idea was not to just slot the holes so that I could slide it up, because when I would tighten it down, it could still slide down over time, and then I would have an oil leak. You know, reliability is the most important thing with this car, not so much horsepower, and also serviceability. So like being able to use a super small off-the-shelf oil filter, like this is just, it's just an FD RX7 engine inside an RX8. Like, it's not some crazy high performance deal here. This is like a mostly stock two-rotor, aside from all the craziness bolted onto it. So what I opted to do is, if you can imagine, there's a vertical plane where that bolt would go straight down. Imagine you cock that at an angle. And what that's going to do is allow me to slide this up, but still hit the hole in the iron. I really don't want to modify the iron. So in my handy dandy breast pocket right here, I've got some bolts, and you can see that I bent the bolt at an angle. So what that allows me to do, the bent bolt accompanied with kind of slotting this hole at an angle, allows me to put this bent bolt in here. And now you can see that the stud, or the bolt protruding, is now more towards the back, which then when you put this in here and bolt it down, it sits perfectly in the center, and it isn't going to pull itself backwards if I had just slotted the hole straight. So this is my shot number one. I also have another one of these oil pedestals, and I don't know if I'm gonna drop the engine in tonight, and my goal is to put it in tonight, and we might just switch this out after the fact, but I'm gonna have my buddy weld these holes shut, the actual bolt holes on the stock pedestal. We're just gonna fill them full of aluminum. This is cast. It's gonna be kind of annoying, but it's not like we're trying to seal it. I just wanna fill them up. Once I fill them up, I'll remark the FD pattern and then drill a new hole for a 6mm. Like an FD uses studs instead of through bolts, and then I'll put the studs in the right spot, and then that way I can still use this oil filter housing. The oil cooler line's in the right spot, it clears the intake manifold for the filter, and it clears the RX8 clutch slave cylinder. So like, this is the easiest way. If you have to weld that, so be it. The other thing you could do is, like, if you just drilled these out way bigger and then put some sort of a spacer or something in there to offset this so that it wouldn't move. Like if y'all remember, like back in the day, you'd buy, and I say back in the day like I'm old, I just have an appreciation for old, rare, weird, and obscure parts. If you bought a set of like mag racing wheels, like magnesium wheels from the 70s or the 60s, a lot of times they would be slotted on the wheel itself, and then they would have a steel insert that went into the wheel. And basically that steel insert, you could flip it around backwards or different directions to give you a different wheel bolt pattern. So like if you were 5 lug and you flip the studs to the outside, you could be 5 on 5 for like big GM, or you could be 5 on 4.5, you switched them the other way for Ford. So that's kind of what I would imagine here, is like, imagine having a little flip chip that went in there to offset the bolts, but that's probably honestly a little too complex. So this is gonna go on here. I gotta put a gasket on it, clean all this oil that keeps coming out of here off. I'm gonna put a little RTV on this. It is super high pressure. I don't typically like using a paper gasket for super high pressure, but a paper gasket with some glue and snugging these down, we'll see if it leaks. If it does, then I'll change it and put a metal gasket on it, and I'll try to cut the metal gasket so it fits better. I don't know. This is the only really weird and obscure part of this. Like, the rest of this stuff's mostly just straight up FD RX7 parts, but we're putting them in an RX8. If you have any tool cart recommendations, drop them in the comments below, because this just gets a little excessive because I end up working off the ground, and I like to clean my floor before I do crazy stuff, plus taking pictures for the gram. I clean the shop. It's the end of the night because I hate coming back here in the morning and having to be a mess. So I'm going to get this dropped in, but I want to show you guys a few things that I did specifically on this that y'all just might think are pretty cool. One of the things that I've been doing as of late is taking an OEM twin turbo drain, which would have stuck out about this far, and then modifying it to have a -10 drain. I still have to make the drain line here, but I want to get it in the car first and make sure there's not like a sway bar or something in the way, and figure out, you know, do I need to go back and then down, or can I just go straight, or how that needs to happen. So I want to figure that out. I've got my oil metering pump, this oil pan stuff done, this is done, trigger wheels on, water pump's all assembled, water pump housings on, the thermostat stuff's done, you saw that. I like just going ahead and mocking everything up at this point, so I know like my fuel line clears my oil filler neck. Right here, we got the ID 750 super rad fuel filter right here. It's actually, let me show you this up close. I don't think I showed you this yet in the video. So this fuel filter is rated to 750 liters per hour of fuel flow. It's hard to find like a inline pre-injector fuel filter that can really handle that amount of flow that's not giant and, you know, hard to package. And honestly, this fuel filter, if you weren't putting it right here, is kind of hard to package, like under your car on a frame rail or wherever, right? So I opted to put it up here. It's a cleanable element filter. So basically there's this little latch right here. So notice this kind of spins a little bit, but it won't come off, okay? So you hit this little latch, it releases, kind of like a gas can where you gotta unscrew the lid on a gas can. This comes off, and then once you get it all the way unscrewed, it slides out just like that, and I have my cleanable filter element in here. This is a super trick piece, and I have to give the guys at Full Function Engineering a mad thanks, because I wasn't initially going to run this, and Jason's like, dude, this is the best fuel filter ever. You've got to run one. We can help you out with getting one. They actually had this as kind of the scratch and dent special, so I appreciate them sending me the one they were using for mock-up and stuff. But it's just insane. I had never thought about doing something like this. I love the location of it. There's obviously no good way to, like if I had mounted this vertically, right, imagine tipping it up, and you could, in theory, unscrew it without spilling fuel everywhere. I've never found it easy to change a fuel filter without making a mess. Even on my Duramax, the filter's giant, sits on the side. Regardless, when I take it off, like I gotta reprime it, I'm pouring diesel fuel in, it just becomes a mess regardless. So here at least, I've got room underneath it to maybe put a towel or something, catch some of the fuel. You know, it's gonna go around the back of the AC compressor and then hit the ground. So it's not gonna be like on top of a hot exhaust or something like that. But in light of servicing it, on top of this right here is what's called a differential pressure gauge. As the flow is coming across from the left to the right, once it sees a higher pressure on this side than the output side, it knows that the fuel filter itself is clogged up. And then this little white line will start to go out to the right, okay? When it starts to go out to the right, that means it's time to service and change your fuel filter. So the coolest part about this is I'll be able to actually monitor it very easily, right? It's like there's nothing gonna be on top of this. I mean, my intercooler pipe kind of comes through here, but I'll be able to see that, which is huge because on my RX7, like I drove to the tail of the dragon, we made laps and laps, and then the fuel filter got clogged up, it burnt up the fuel pump, and I was straight on the side of the road. And like if I'd have been able to see that fuel filter was starting to get clogged, aside from like, you know, a pressure drop at high load or it going a little bit lean, then I'd have been able to just stop and clean it before the pump got burnt out. So that's a huge win. In addition to just like this one as well being rated for 750 liters per hour, I have two Walbro 450s going in the tank, which I haven't installed yet, but they will go in here shortly. And that's like plenty of fuel filter for that. You would think 450 plus 450 is 900 and this is 750, but trust me, your fuel pump load, okay, how they rate them, the 450 liters per hour, is at a set pressure. So once you start raising the pressure or lowering the pressure, that flow rate actually changes. So it's probably 450 liters per hour plus or minus 50 liters per hour as you're using it, and more or less minus. So as you put more load, the flow rate's gonna go down. So this filter isn't gonna be a restriction, but it's more than most of those inline filters you would buy for under your car. And this is -8 inlets and outlets. So that's that. JDL, oil filler neck. I need to have this Mazda Speed oil cap. I didn't even realize this was worth some money. I made a post on the RX7 group. I'm like, hey guys, I wanna buy a purple oil cap, but I don't like all the Fleabay janky ones. Like I'm not putting a crazy $10 oil cap on this. Like I want a nice one. And I've had this blue Mazda Speed cap laying around. I don't know where I got it. It just kind of showed up. It might have been on the green car. Who knows? The blue doesn't match, but the size of it's perfect. And I wanted a purple one. And then I had a guy kind of like, dude, the Mazda Speed caps are worth a bunch of money. And he posted a bunch of eBay links to these things selling for like 400 bucks. Look, I don't know who's paying 400 bucks for an oil cap. It ain't me. But at that point, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have this one anodized purple. So again, I talked to the Full Function guys because they have their stuff anodized this specific purple, and I'm gonna send them this, and they're gonna re-anodize this purple for me. So I'm super stoked for that because it'll just be trick. It'll be like my own little special Mazda speed cap, you know, and it kind of even lines up the words to the right area, which I could get a different O-ring to change it, but I'm pretty pumped. I love this setup, guys. This is like, I mean, this is the most insane engine setup I've ever done. I've never had an REW before. This is my first REW. All my other stuff was like turbo 2 blocks or just Renesis stuff, old school 4 ports, like gnarly Bridgeport 12As, stuff like that. I've built a bunch of REWs for other people and put them in, you know, FDs for people, and I've worked on probably 10 FDs doing engine installs, or maybe I've done 10 engine installs into FDs. It's probably 10 different ones, I don't know, 15 different ones. But I'm super familiar with them, I've just never had the cash for one, and to finally have, you know, like I said, I got a funny short I'm gonna film, but it's like Johnny Tran. I got 100K under the hood of this S2000. Not 100K, but we got, you know, 20K under the hood of a $2,000 car. So I did actually pay $2,000 for this whenever I bought it. So, but I'll show you the engine bay before this thing goes back in here tomorrow. That stuff's always still where it is. I hazed my little cross spray silver there, but that gives you a nice definition of what that looks like. Ignition coils mounted down low. Obviously it's ugly without the panels in here. And later this fall, right after 7 stock and our Cannonball run, the whole car is going to come back apart, and the engine bay will get painted, and the exterior of the car is going to get painted later this year. And I also went through and I massaged this little bit of the firewall up just a smidge, and I hammered that back a little bit more. Did I gain a ton of space? No, but I probably gave myself another ½ an inch up top in the cowl. There's nothing on the back side of that. It's one wall of metal. It hammered super easily. And then the firewall actually probably gained another ½ of an inch, which is going to let me get this bolt installed easily. So super stoked for that. Next up, engine install and the updated oil filter pedestal, and then we'll be one step closer to cranking this thing up. So let me tell you, I wish somebody would make an off-the-shelf part that adapts the REW to the RX8 filter location so you can use an RX8 transmission, because that's the only complication for this. But this worked out. All right, guys, I caved. I couldn't do it. I was gonna run those bent bolts. Not the move, not the move. So what I did, you just saw, I had my buddy Herb aluminum TIG weld a bunch of extra aluminum on here, and then I went ahead and marked and re-drilled the RX8 pedestal and put 2 6mm studs in it, just like a factory FD pedestal would have been. It's not machined for O-rings like the FD would, so I'm gonna give this little paper gasket a shot. Ideally it holds up. If it doesn't, well, we'll know pretty quickly whenever we fire this thing up here in a second. So this little gasket would go on here. I'm gonna put some RTV on both sides of it. It basically now fits perfectly over the FD holes, exactly how it should be. So the pedestal itself, you know, hasn't moved, but just how it is affixed is now in the proper location. It still lines up. The spacing of the holes from the FD to the RX8 is the same. So I'm just gonna glue this on here. I figured I'd show you that because this is kind of a pretty unique thing to this swap. Nobody makes a modified pedestal that's like an RX8 to fit the FD. The only other real solution to this is to block this off and feed oil in with the -10 AN or something like that from your oil coolers, and then put a remote mounted filter somewhere. If it was more of a race car, I would say do that 100%. You get a little more oil volume, serviceability, etc. But like, guys, I'm gonna drive this thing thousands of miles, and the ability to just use an off-the-shelf, not that remote ones aren't off-the-shelf either, they're just small block Chevy versions, but to be able to keep the packaging simple, have less areas to leak, you know, there'd still be a plate to leak here, there'd still be a line here, then you have all the AN lines to your remote filter, you got to put the filter somewhere. It's just annoying. So this is my solution. There's definitely, I was thinking too, I could have drilled that hole, and like I was talking about this wheel, you know, offset spacer kind of deals, which Herb actually liked that idea too. So that could be something that I could make for these, where you could just take an RX8 one yourself, drill the holes super big, and then put this insert in there that would then offset it so it couldn't move. But I'm gonna bolt this on, and the whole thing goes in the car. It's finally the moment I've been waiting for, which is the final assembly of this whole deal. Pulling the turbo kit off, lifting this thing up, mostly assembled. I'm going to leave the lower intake manifold on. When I drop this in, I think it would be very hard to get it installed once this is in there. Eventually, I'll get a better clutch. Dropping it in is no different than an RX8 engine. I leave the engine mount off, slide this back, get it locked into the transmission and the bell housing bolts. I then had to put the turbo manifold on and the turbo so that I could put the downpipe on before I put the engine mount on because of my wastegate recirculation and its, tightness to the FD style engine mount. But that's just a function of my 3.5-inch downpipe. If you want to make some power, got to make some sacrifices, and that assembly sacrifice is one I was willing to make. So AC bracket, fuel filter, plus the AC compressor all sliding in here. Then jumping down here to the wastegate and the wastegate recirculation tube. Little finicky to get all the V-bands lined up, but it all worked out. I went ahead and wrapped my harness in this heat wrap. It makes it look really nice after my kind of messy heat shrink job. Routed all the wires into the ECU with the Haltech grommet through the fender to the Tuned by Sean harness, and then stuck the harness behind the intake and got it up on top of the engine. With the downpipe, this was tight, but I'm very happy with how it fits. This is the moment of this video I've been ruining the entire time. I don't remember how much fuel is in this thing. I'm hoping empty, because I think the last time I drove it would have been, I don't know, doing donuts with my family on Christmas or something like that, maybe? I don't know, the tires are corded, so that's gotta be what it is. I gotta pop this fuel pump hanger out of here, and the RX8 gas tank actually goes up pretty high compared to this. So if this O-ring leaks, you won't be able to fill your tank up more than 5/8 of a tank-ish. Which means if I'm more full than 5/8 of a tank, a bunch of gas is going to come out of here, and I'm not going to turn the fuel gauge on to find out. So let's see what happens, I guess. At least this is fairly convenient. We have the extended cab door open so I can reach. Oh shoot. Everything is getting wet. I don't think I'm fully full or fully empty. Okay. Oh yeah, okay. There's fuel coming out of here. Lovely. All right. Well, this is one of those spray paint can moments where you're using a well-ventilated area. Let's set up some fans and open up the shop door and hope that the whole building doesn't explode with the fuel fumes that are about to engulf this place. And I'll get one of my trash pumps once I take this out and pump the tank down from here, since everything else is modified and changed. It's not my first gas tank modification we did. Oh yeah, she's basically at the mark. When I did my cannonball run, I had to... How does this thing even come out of here? Oh, I didn't want to have to get any closer to this. Get the hoist, I'm going to be stuck. That's what's holding it in. I'm hoping that is my level sensor. Oh, I just made a big mess. I'm very much hoping that these two little wires right here are the level sensor wiring, because I don't see any sort of a level sensor on this deal. I've got to get this siphon line off. So because this car has a saddle style tank, meaning there's a tank on that side and this side kind of, there it is one tank, but it has this big hump in the middle. It siphons fuel from one side to the other. Okay, there we go, got that off. Don't break the clip, don't break the clip, don't break the clip. Ouch. Oh yeah, fuel everywhere, just make a mess. We're committed to the mess. So the siphon line, as the pump works, it draws the fuel from the other side. I have a feeling in buzz that my siphon or something is acting funny because it runs out of gas at a quarter tank of fuel. So it's either the siphon line isn't working very well, or... Seriously? No shot. I gotta go fishing for that, and I'm not gonna use my hand. Dang it! I just dropped the blue clip for the siphon line in there. Well, what I was explaining, the siphon line. buzz runs out of gas at a quarter tank or a little bit less than. So if the siphon's not working, it's not going to pull that side. There's also 2 level sensors in an RX8 tank so that it knows, like, as the level goes down on both sides or one or the other. I don't know. It's a little tricky. But for now, we've got this out of here. Well, assuming nothing explodes, we should have some fuel coming out of this deal. Oh yeah. It's almost like we know what we're doing. So I just dropped a submersible in-tank pump into the tank with a big old line hooked up to it, just so I can see what's going on, and honestly it's what I had laying around. But 340 liter per hour, it's the old pump, I forget which one it was. It's one of the ones that died in the RX7 at Deals Gap, which I've successfully killed 2 pumps at Deals Gap. But it works enough to do this, and I don't have to worry about like pumping junk through it. I can just pump whatever I want. So I don't remember if this has premix in it. Most likely not, because I don't premix my RX8s like on the street, just with the stock oil metering pump. If you're just driving around town, there's no reason to. So it's probably just straight gas, which means it's 87 because low compression RX8, which also means I'll be able to put this in my lawnmower. So we got a fresh tank of fuel for the lawnmower. I'm just gonna go ahead and pump this thing down. I dropped that thing in there. It's way easier to go fishing in shallow water. Notice all the bubbles coming as I overflow the tank. Okay, I was gonna get excited about hydraulics and stuff, and then I overflowed this gas can. And by that I mean, like, it's full. I'm gonna get a lid for that, and then we'll have our little hydraulics lesson. So notice right at that hose clamp that there is some bubbles or some turbulence. That is because the diameter of the hose changes, and there's also like the square edge of that metal insert in there. So when you have that diameter change, but especially at a sharp edge where it's not smooth, so like a nice smooth conical reducer versus a completely harsh step, you're gonna get these little swirl marks happening in the liquid right around that sharp edge, which actually slows down your flow, and that's called your exit coefficient. So say you have like a pipe pumping into a lake, how it exits the pipe has a drastic effect on how much flow you can actually shoot out of that pipe. Fun fact, physics in action right there. So I have to give a huge thanks to JDL Manufacturing for making this surge tank dual pump hanger. There aren't a lot of options, and talking with the guy who designed this thing, it's a very tight fitting area to fit 3 pumps and this little surge tank container, and the RX8 tank is so short. I just didn't want to mess with anything external, and this is such a nice piece for how small and concise it is. So he crushed it on this. Go check out his website and you can get one of these. Alright, this is probably one of the coolest things I've put together, albeit a royal pain in the butt to kind of assemble just because everything is so tight in here. So we've got 2 Walbro 450s. I'm using the OEM RX8 fuel pump as my lift pump. As much as this is like a surge tank, something to consider, because this is kind of small, is that this lives at the very bottom of the fuel tank, right? So like there's no tons of slosh happening in an RX8 tank, right? You have both sides. So what this is really doing is a great way to just hold 2 pumps in here. Albeit, like, in my head, the surge tank, it physically can't be any bigger, but some of like the race car fuel cells, things like that, you would think that the surge tank itself would be, you know, giant, but it's just space constraints. This is literally from this flange to the bottom, that's all the height you have. But the fuel tank itself goes up, you know, higher than the tunnel in here. So I've got the siphon set up. I went ahead and pinned the sensor to just one of these. It's exactly like a fuel pump connector that would come in the box with your fuel pump, but a simple sealed, you know, 2-pin connector so that I can hook up my level sensor. The level sensor is in the tank itself, like over here. I don't really know how you get it out, but either way, the wires are there. Hook those up. There's ports on here for the wires. Lift pump, pump 1, pump 2, ground, all that stuff's hooked up on the bottom. It's all crazy in there. I've got some safety wire in here because I love safety wire just to keep everything in position. Assuming my safety wire still allows me to install this in the tank with how stiff some of this is, everything is good to go. No leaks, hose clamps on it all. We should be good to go. No kinks. The only thing unfortunate is you can't run a pre-filter, but we've got that injector dynamics filter, so we should be good. So let's Get this plugged in. This is where I make another mess. Promising now. Let's just do this one thing at a time. Siphon line first. I got this thing installed, albeit that was a royal pain in the butt, and I was like completely just in here doing it in the dark. It was kind of a mess, but it's in, ready to hook the wires up to it. I don't really know how much space I have. How much space do I have under here? It's just, oh, plenty, okay. So I really don't want like my wires to short out on the cover. I'm gonna go ahead and get the lock ring started such that it's kind of in a position. And then we've got to raise the car up now. I guess I'll do the wiring first. Then I'm gonna raise the car up so I can run the Dash 8 feed line. And then I've got to disconnect the factory feed line, which is this deal right here. This rubber piece with the quick disconnect. We're gonna disconnect that from the frame of the car, put a Dash 6 conversion fitting on it, and run a Dash 6 AN up to here, which is 3/8, because I'm using the OEM RX8 feed line for my return. So that way I have one hard line under the car, and then my Dash 8 line, the big one, is the only real soft line. And I think I'm gonna run that in the trans tunnel. I haven't really decided yet. We're gonna cover that when we get to it here in a second, but I'm pumped. This looks freaking awesome. Nice and clean in here. As much as it was a pain to get it in there, it's a future me problem to get it out. And ideally, we shouldn't really have to mess with it. So before I lifted the car up in the air, I went ahead and threw the bash bar, my intercooler, and my intercooler piping that runs under the bumper on the car. Just wanted to get this stuff off the ground. The car looks more complete, and I blew all of this stuff out with air before I put it on. I also had to wipe the car down because it has to look good if we're going to fire this thing up, and especially if we're going to film it. All right, guys, I have been grinding away on this thing for the past couple of days, and I've gotten this thing pretty much ready to start, or at least I hope so. I just put oil in it, and then I forgot I didn't make a turbo drain line, so I whipped one of those up really quick, just a super simple Dash 10 deal right there. You can see my EMAP thing is here, but I don't have it fully tightened into that, so I don't know if we're going to have any leaks there. It's got 4 quarts of oil in it. I'm still waiting on 2 fittings, here, and then the opposite side to block those off, and then the Dash 10 fitting for a catch can, which I gotta find a spot for that at some point. But at least for right now, I have everything hooked up, including we finished the fuel system. Let me show you this. I'm so proud of this because I don't like it when, and I guess it's just the fact that I've been around all these janky 90s cars for most of my young life of getting around cars, and it's like just what I could afford for being around cars. And I hate it when there's sketchy fuel pump wiring, okay? The run-of-the-mill question, you're on the dyno, you're turning your boost up is, well, do you have 12 volts at the fuel pump? Because somebody put a giant fuel pump in it and then didn't upgrade the wiring. So this is fully upgraded right here, as high fancy as we can get. I've got my battery in the back. I've got 2 30 amp relays here. There's a 50 amp fuse right there. Comes straight from the battery. It's grounded right to the chassis next to the main ground. The OEM fuel pump trigger, so the Haltech through the Tune by Sean harness. Mr. Rad 5, go get you a discount. Any Haltech stuff, any stuff on Tune by Sean's website. The Tune by Sean harness turns on the OEM fuel pump. I'm using the OEM fuel pump as a lift pump. The stock wiring is running my lift pump, just the baby one. When the OEM lift pump turns on, the 12 volts that turns that pump on triggers one of these relays. So one of these relays is a 12 volt signal relay. Like when it sees 12, it turns on. The other relay goes to the Haltech as my secondary auxiliary fuel pump, which then gets turned on by a ground from the Haltech. So one of these is a ground relay, one of them is a positive relay, but effectively 3 pumps, 1 relay for each pump. The factory relay, and then these 2 back here. I'm like super pumped. It's all TXL wire, which is really nice stuff. And then in here, I'm gonna give you the Cliff Notes version from afar. I'll zoom you in. Look at that. Wired to the JDL thing. We got the Dash 8 feed. Line is hooked up, ran all the way to the front. I actually ran it in the trans tunnel, and I'll show you guys that after I get the ECU flashed, because I'm ready to put the tune in, which I just spent an hour or so going through the entire tune file. If I turn this laptop on again, I have been having terrible luck with laptops, guys. My one laptop died, and then I'm borrowing this one, and I haven't decided a good next one to buy. So if you have a good laptop for tuning, that's not like I'm not talking a Panasonic Tough Book here. I'm talking like, find me something that's like $400 that'll run Haltech. That's really all I need. Let's see. I'll update when I close the Haltech software. We're not connected to an ECU. Set you all down. Can I give y'all and me an angle so you can both see the screen? Yeah. So right now we're gonna plug the ECU in for the first time, assuming green light's on. Okay. The nice part about the Haltech stuff is that you can plug into it. It will use the computer to power itself while you're doing some tuning. Let's see. Yep, this is the first time we turn it on. I promise I won't drive my Haltech powered vehicle on the streets for off-road use only. Drum roll, please. Sunroof roll, please. Okay, that rebooted the thing. Now, I haven't put power to the car yet, so we're going to hook up the battery and then turn the key on and see what happens. We're going to find out if, I guess we're almost out of fuel, so it shouldn't have any fuel leaks because there won't be fuel in it. So maybe we should put some gas in it. But we'll at least put power to it and make sure nothing burns to the ground. All right. This is stressful. There's a lot of work that could just be fried in 2 seconds. My key is on. Fuel pumps are running. Lights, lots of things clicked. I don't smell burning stuff. Dash is on. We're officially out of gas. Okay. That's a big win right there. It didn't burn to the ground with the key on. I do think I want to go ahead and put some fuel in it. I do have all the lines tightened. Everything is ready to go. Upper intake manifold's on. Fuel, everything's good. It's all plugged in. Assuming I didn't miss anything, it's all plugged in. I want to run through a little sensor diagnostic. I just want to make sure that like my EMAP, my fuel pressure, oil temperature, all those things, coolant temperature, intake air temp, all that stuff is reading. And then with fuel in it, we should see fuel pressure. Ignition is set up. I got the full function thing based. It should make some noise. It should make some noise. Oil temperature is reading 82 degrees Fahrenheit. That is what my air conditioner thermostat is set to. Clutch, all that stuff's reading. Engine stopped. Ignition angle is that. Injectors at that. Coolant temperature centers at 64, but there's no coolant in it, so the metal is probably going to be a little colder than the air temperature around it. Mat pressure is 0. The big question is going to be, does my TPS work? So let me check my fuel pressure, and I'm going to bump, oh, the IC7's on too. Sick. Clutch pedal, we got that. All right, let me flip the laptop. This is where the troubleshooting begins. And it helps to watch some of my other videos so that you know how ECUs and tuning and sensors work, to then be able to diag your car before you take it to Ernie at the dyno and say, hey, let's tune it. And then the drive-by-wire doesn't work, you know? Also, I got the little laptop blues where the laptop doesn't work unless it's plugged in the charger, so that's a good fun time. Okay, the troubleshooting begins. I think if I read it all. Whew. Oh yeah, there we go. Now we got space. So it should have all the wireless has not been configured yet. Enable wireless. Wireless setup. If y'all want to connect to my RX8 while we're doing a cannonball run and hack my tune, RX8 is the network. The password is going to be password. Just connect to the thingy. I'm ready to smoke some FDs with this thing. Are you ready to be back? Green machine. I've spent so much time inside this car. All right. Engine configuration, trigger system. Let's just make sure that my settings were saved. Generic missing tooth. Perfect. All right. Let's go to drive-by-wire, 1 throttle. The pedal is reading. Okay, so that's a win. All right, pedal works. But I don't have these working. Why aren't those working? Why would my pedal sensor work but that not work? Calibration. Okay, I got calibration errors. Maybe that's why it doesn't work. All right. Calibrate. Click calibrate to start the calibration process. Calibrate. Oh. It's doing stuff. It's doing stuff. I've never had one of these before, guys. I've never done drive-by-wire in my life. Calibration error, what? Wait, step 1 limits, we got it. Calibrate. This is why I hate having Haltech freaking RX8 internet, because then my computer connects to the Haltech, and then I don't have internet to Google why my drive-by-wire doesn't work. This is what I do, guys, off camera. I Google stuff, figure it out, and then I tell you guys how to do it in the video. Oh, man. That means I got to go message people and ask them questions because the internet is not proving reliable. The fun part will be, though, let's just crank it. See what happens. You just heard that thing try to start. I don't even have the drive-by-wire set up. I don't know that I want to let it run for longer than that. I assumed it just wasn't going to run. No way. Will it idle? We have a running REW swapped RX8 and it's not loud. This is awesome. I didn't let it run long enough to see if we had oil pressure. No way. I'm gonna have to stop though, because I think the drive-by-wire is stuck like a little bit open or something, and that's why it's trying to idle up. It went straight for 3,000. I just don't want it to like rev limiter itself. Okay. See, throttle position's at 3% now. So why is it? I should be able to hear this. I don't hear it. I think because it's not seeing the secondary voltage. Sorry guys, I get distracted easily when it comes to, I want this stuff to work right, but I think because it's not seeing 2 TPS voltages come out of the drive-by-wire, the Haltech's mad, and I don't even have one of them, so, but I wouldn't think that that would matter. Okay, clutch switch works, brake pedal switch. Brake pedal switch works, that's rad. Where's flex fuel compensation? I still don't know why I don't have fuel pressure. Like, why is it starting? Honestly, it could just be starting on oil that's in the engine, because I did put this, when I store engines, I fill them up with 2-stroke oil, and I bet that's what it's running on. It literally just smells like straight oil. Well, I found my issue. Turns out, per the Haltech Facebook forums, digging through the comments, using the search function in a Facebook group. It's very helpful, guys, if you've never used it. I found that the GM Gen 5 LT 5-wire throttle body has some special signal that it sends out, and it's not a standard 5-volt TPS reference. Thus, this throttle body will not work, and I need to order another throttle body. Oh well. All right, a problem for future me. It's super late. I need to eat dinner. Check this out, guys. That's the view. That's such the move. Not this screen, though. I don't like the double tax, but imagine we were on this one. Just data. Where I can look over here and be like, bam, my RX8's running perfect. And then, oh, so is that not the off? Oh, that's home. Where's off? I'll make a screen that's all black so that it's not in your face. I was hoping I could power this off and just have it be off, which would be fantastic. While I'm driving down the road doing a cannonball, I don't have all this bright, crazy screen in my eyes. Because the nice thing about this is the RX8 has the best nighttime dash change ever. It's like, instead of just turning lights on to make it light up, we actually dim it and change the whole color scheme. All right, well, this was a massively productive video. This is probably the most amount of stuff I've gotten done in a video in a long time. And I didn't come up here to watch the turbo spool. I don't care. I'm gonna have to get a throttle body like super fast to get swapped out so I can make it to the dyno, and then I guess I gotta repin it. The good thing is that when I wired this, I left myself a ton of length right here. So this is my drive-by-wire plug. It's got a whole bunch of extra meat in it. I can shorten those up and pin in a new connector. No big deal. And I did wire it 4 6 wires. I pulled 6 TPS, 6 with 2 TPSs to this location, not because I knew that this wood wouldn't work. I just knew that that's the most common setup, and if I would need to change it in the future, I could. So I have all that ready. I'm just pumped that it like tried to start. I'm assuming it makes, oh, there's even some heat in the turbo, guys. I'm assuming that it makes oil pressure because I didn't change anything inside the engine. I simply resealed the oil pan. This engine, I don't think it was ever on a dyno, but it was in the 4-rotor FD. This is the original like stock REW, and I say original, it's the original one that was in that car when I took it apart, but it is not the original one to the car, okay? It might have some of the original parts in it, but it was rebuilt by Kevin at Rotary Resurrection. He's another guy, if you're on the East Coast and you need an RX8 engine rebuild or even an FD or whatever engine rebuild, he does kill it. He's been rebuilding engines longer than like probably I've been alive, honestly. Check it out. Free shout out for you, Kevin, here. But he rebuilt this engine and put that whole white car together for Johnny, I think, at some point. Johnny's who's got the 4-rotor car. But it had stock twins. It was running water methanol. Like, it's a healthy engine. No issues. It's a perfectly running car. But I'm pumped, guys. This is literally insane. I'm so happy that this thing started. I can take a little bit of a break from the shop tonight. I got to edit this video, but it didn't burn itself to the ground. It didn't fry. I'm beyond relieved that it made noise. Obviously, I have some base timing stuff to set. I got to put belts on it. Oh, the drive-by-wire thing's irking me. I got some fittings coming in the mail. I mean, I got to tidy up the coolant system. There's this coolant line right here. Goes over there to the back of the block. The coolant line right there to the heater core needs to go to the front of the block down here. I've got the ports. I just need to get the rubber line and make the hoses. I wasn't that worried about at this point to like start this thing. I like to not hook up all my intercooler pipes on the first go after taking any of my boosted cars apart. You never know, there could be a mouse inside the intercooler. If I start it like this, it should blow all the crap out and then hook up the intake so we're ripping. But yeah, I guess I could check if there's fuel. What's this? That's probably oil from whenever I overflowed that. This is going to make a huge mess. I shouldn't do that. I was going to open the filter and see, but I'm just going to dump fuel everywhere. I mean, I am leaving. I could just yard sale the fuel, but either way, mad progress. I can't thank you guys enough for watching the videos. It's been crazy getting this thing done, and it's going to keep getting crazier. So there's a lot of stuff that's been in the works in the background that I'm finally going to make a video about. So if you're on the Patreon, you'll know what that project has been for the past 2 years. I've been filming a bunch of different videos with other content creators about it and haven't really been able to release it because I don't have the car here. I don't have the chassis done. Like, it's still getting built. And I think this video should be, it's going to unveil the project, but it's also going to help light a fire under the guys who are building it. So I've just been struggling to get anything from them. So with that, thank you guys so much. I have to thank the Patreon members so much for helping out. This video would not have been possible at all to get this project done without the help of Full Function Engineering, tuned by Sean, and JDL Manufacturing. You know, a lot of this stuff, guys, is super nice parts. And I really didn't want to halfway do my REW swapped RX8. So getting those guys on board to help out was insane in getting this project done in a timely manner, especially the Patreon guys, because without them, all of this stuff wouldn't be possible. You know, they support the channel, answering the questions over there, just checking it. They get to see everything happen pretty much as it happens, and it's rad to have those guys support because they've been here a long time, and I cannot wait to be able to be in a position to really give back to them. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Live a life you don't need a vacation from, and keep it rad. Gosh. I'm just saying, I cannot wait to roll into Dill's Gap next year and have something that's properly fast to hang with the big dogs. Now, I ain't going to be able to keep up with Mr. Neil and his 3-rotor FD. I mean, I'll try. But we're not just going to be that stock RX8 guy anymore, or the old first-gen guy. We're going to have a real REW-powered car. It's like an FD. We're becoming an FD guy. It just looks like an RX8. Peace, guys.